All right, we can begin.
Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen here on the live stream. Good evening, Christopher Makos. Good evening, Franziska Kunze. Welcome. Great that we are here together tonight for this live stream. It is a joint activity of the Bavarian Center of Transatlantic Relations. The short form, Christopher, is the Amerikahaus, which is a cultural institution here in the city of Munich since maybe 1949 or something like that. Secondly, the US consulate here in Munich and the American Chamber of Commerce. Chamber of Commerce is a long-standing cross-border economical institution. And it is great that we have you tonight for this talk with Franziska Kunze. Maybe I say three words to introduce you. I learned that you were born in Massachusetts, grew up in California, and then moved to Paris, where you studied architecture, and later you worked in an apprentice with Man Ray. Your photography and your photographs have been subject of numerous exhibitions in galleries and museums throughout the United States, in Europe, in Japan, and in Munich, here at the Amerikahaus. You played an important role in introducing Jean-Michel Basquiat and Keith Haring to Andy Warhol. And with that, as a close friend of Andy Warhol, you were center of the cultural scene in New York. Your photos that you've done over decades show portraits of the most famous people like Andy Warhol, Elizabeth Taylor, Salvador Dali, John Lennon, Mick Jagger. And with that, you are an iconic photographer of the United States. Let me also introduce Franziska Kunze. Franziska Kunze is the new curator of the Pinakothek Staatsgemäldesammlung here in Munich. And she is the curator for photography and media art. And with that, she is the person who knows most about photography, apart from maybe Christopher. Before Franziska joined the Staatsgemäldesammlungen, she was head of the collection of contemporary art of the Museum of Münster. And with that introduction, Christopher and Franziska, I would like to turn over the conversation to the two of you. Once again, thank you that you are here tonight. And Franziska, the word is yours.
Okay, thank you for the introduction. Yes, again, hi, Christopher. It's so nice to seeing you well, at least through the internet. Where are you at the moment? I think we all are curious.
I'm actually in New York City.
Perfect. So it's about 1 p.m. there, right?
It's exactly 4 minutes past 1 in the afternoon.
Perfect. Okay, well, when I was thinking about how to start this conversation with you, and also after listening to your insights on every image on the website, I was curious and came up with the idea to ask you the following question first. So if we had time for just one image to talk about, which one would that be? You can pick any picture of the exhibition, but just one.
You shouldn't have asked me that earlier before the pre-thing. How mean of you. One image to talk about.
We will talk about more, no worries.
No. You know what? If I could talk about one of them, I think I'd talk about the Altered Image series. And, you know, the alternate image series, and I say that because that is about identity. And if anything is more important in world culture at the moment, I would think that the alternate image, that's it. That picture there. It's people often ask, you know, I have a book out that was art directed in London. It's called Lady Warhol. Often people call these drag photos, which they're not really. It's because Andy is wearing a man's shirt, a man's tie. The only thing that's different is his face. And if you're not familiar with this, what this imagery is about, in 1921, Man Ray and Marcel Duchamp did a series called Rose La Vie, and they were playing with identity too. As we all know, Man Ray was the photographer, Duchamp was the painter. And so in this case, when Andy and I decided to work on a collaboration, we thought, let's take something from artistic context in history, some sort of provenance. And we sourced that out. And in today's world, these pictures were this art collaboration, and subsequently they were shown at the Ferragamo Museum in Firenze a few years ago. And they've become kind of fashion photos, but they've become a lot of things. And in a world that is so upside down and so topsy-turvy, and men's rights, women's rights, Black rights, this idea of who we are in the world, not just in America or as Germans, but as people, our identity. Who are we as a world culture or as an individual nation culture? And so these photographs speak to that question. It's about identity and who we are, and playing with identity in the way that Cindy Sherman or Gilbert and George or the Hilton brothers, which I'm part of, play with. And so for me, back to your first question, if I were to talk about one of them, this one photo epitomizes the attitude of all the people in the other pictures. Who are they trying to be? Is Rob Lowe trying to be a celebrity? Is Man Ray trying to be a painter or projecting a painter? Not trying to be, in other words, but that's who the identity that I'm capturing in the pictures are. So I'm hoping that that is a cohesive answer to at least a starting point from one photograph.
Yeah, well, this is great because we thought about picking like 6 images we can talk about, and I chose my 6, and this is one of them actually. So I'm very happy, and I have just this copy with me, but one of the images of this series was also in the Monopol magazine here.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Yeah.
Yes, and so I read that you took 65 pictures of this series. So one for each week of the year, as you said.
Yeah.
And
well, you know, it's also the cover of this.
Oh, it's blurred. I think you need to come closer, probably. This is what happens when you blur the background.
Oh, wow.
But if it's the same, maybe I should come back with my with this one. Now it works. Okay.
It's a little bit different.
Yes.
Wow. I can't believe that. Oh, there it is. Oh.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. That's
well,
okay. I didn't know that. Oh, we can't do show and tell with the blurred background. Wow.
That's a problem, actually.
Yeah, okay. No. Okay.
But what I found quite interesting also with this picture and also when looking at this series is that so Andy Warhol was not really cross-dressing, but instead he was playing with identity, as you said, and he did this with the help of wigs and makeup and posture, and in the way he places his hands, as we can see here again. I come back to this one.
That's one of my favorite ones where he's playing with his hands. It is so, you know, in a culture where people are identifying themselves as he, him, or sissy, you know, all these pronouns and descriptions of each other, this picture is still so contemporary, I think. It still speaks to so many issues. And, you know, I've had a few exhibitions where we just show these pictures. And it's so interesting how people just it doesn't matter that a lot of them are the same issue. I mean, it's 5 wigs, 365 pictures, 1 picture for every day. So, you know, when I've been to my exhibitions where people sort of, they look at them and they're kind of staring back at themselves like, what does this mean? Like, what does it mean to do something like this? So I love that that's in your selection of pictures.
Yes, and I mean, what I was also curious, and maybe the audience is quite curious about, you took so many, or you worked for such a long time with Andy Warhol. How did that happen, actually? So how did you get to know each other in the first place?
Because I got to know him because I had no interest in knowing him at the beginning. You know, it's those people that talk about, well, how did you meet your husband, or how did you meet your wife? And they said, you know, we met and I wasn't interested in him at all, or her, you know what I mean? And I met him at a big exhibition, and I had freshly moved from Southern California. I was much more, wow, let me just take that off the hook 1 second.
So now it's just me.
I'm going to take that off the hook. Sorry about that.
Don't worry.
Yeah. So what happened there is I had just moved from Southern California. I was new in the city, and a friend of mine took Dodson Rader, the writer and author, took me to the Whitney. I think Andy had a early retrospective, or I had a big show there, and I had met him, and I was so surprised to meet him because I had thought he died years ago. You know, it was that kind of stuff. And then he asked me, like, come to Max's Kansas City, and it didn't interest me because I was a California kid loving outdoors, and to go to a club at night didn't interest me. So I said thanks, but I didn't go. But then some months, or maybe a half a year later, I had an exhibition in New York City at 362 Broadway in New York. And it was an exhibition called Step on It. And I had been to a lot of shows, and I took all my photographs and I put them on the floor of the gallery and then covered it in plexiglass because I wanted to play with the viewer. You know how when you go, and you go like this, like this, like this, and people never move their head in any other way except like this. And I wanted to manipulate the viewer. So I thought this would be a great kind of thing for Andy. I thought he would enjoy it. And he couldn't come because he was busy that night, but he sent Bob Colacello. And Bob loved the show, and he said, come to the factory and maybe do some work for interview. And that's how I sort of got into the factory in the way that I wanted to, not just in a social way. And our relationship began that way. And I started doing stuff for Interview Magazine. Andy liked what I did. And then he asked me to art direct his book Exposures. And we became really good friends. I mean, we're both sort of these good Catholic boys. He went to Catholic school. I went to Catholic school. So we, you know, it's sort of like growing up in the same group of people. So we became good friends for all those years.
Okay, brilliant. Well, I think we come back to Andy at a later point. But what I was also fascinated about is, so you said in a quote, the sitter is the decider of the image, the sitter is the editor. So that was a remarkable statement, I think, because it means that each person you photograph shares some kind of authorship with you. Is that right?
Well, I don't know if they share a collaborative thing for sure. Mm-hmm. When you say the sitter, what was that phrase? The sitter?
The sitter is the decider of the image. The sitter is the editor.
Well, ultimately that is. Unlike a lot of other photographers who manipulate their subject matters, you know, like Bruce Weber during that period, he overly romanticized his male subject matter, you know, mm-hmm. very masculine footballs and all that kind of stuff. Or in the case of somebody like a Mapplethorpe, it was all about sex. I mean, except for the flower stuff. But that's not really a sitter. You know, the flowers weren't a sitter. I always allow the subject to bring to the table who they are. I rarely try to change them. Because if I'm going to photograph somebody, I know something about them beforehand. Usually it's not like I just know nothing about them. So I'm already prepared to know that I either know, like, or appreciate what they have to say about who they are and how they present themselves. So I don't really try to change those people at all. And so when they arrive to the photo shoot or the portrait session, it is a collaboration. I mean, I don't really like photographing really passive people that just sit there and wait. I mean, I know how to be a director, but it's more fun if you're going to collaborate and they read some lines to you and you read lines back to them. You know, I thoroughly enjoy that collaboration.
Yes. Well, let's come to the next image of, I chose the one that you took of Man Ray. I guess this is the earliest image of yours in the exhibition. It's from 1975. And yes, I was wondering because, so a photography artist who photographs another photography artist, how did that feel like?
Well, this was a birthday party in Fregene, Italy. And I remember, you know, it has become this thing about how I apprenticed with Man Ray. I went to Fregene for a 3-day weekend and I hung out with Man Ray. And you know, it's not about the quantity of time that you spend somebody, it's the quality of time. And one of the big takeaways I got from him was when we would talk about, and of course, in today's world, photographers don't have contact sheets. They have JPEGs and TIFF and RAW files. And we all know the TIFF and the RAW file are your negatives and the JPEGs are your contact sheets. So he always would say, when you're looking at your contact sheets, obey your first instincts. And I have really obeyed my first instincts always. You know, sure, the editing process comes into effect when you're picking a photograph. But I found myself always going back to my first instincts. When I would take contact sheets and look at them for the first time, I would see something would pop out right away. And it's the same case with Man Ray. When I photographed him, and I have a few others, and the one that you never saw is a Polaroid of Man Ray, which there aren't that many SX70s of Man Ray. And it was like such a fun Polaroid because he was sitting under a big red umbrella, and I'm sure you can find it on the internet. But it was pretty easy because he was collaborative. I mean, he understood the fact here was the master of the guy that we admired, Warhol and I admired for our altered image series. So if anybody understood about collaboration, it would be him.
Yeah. I mean, he is such a shimmering figure within the history of photography. We all know his groundbreaking approach to the technique of photograms, his so-called rayographs. Yeah. So he had a very decisive way of looking at things, I think, and to bringing them into the picture. And you said that you talked a lot to him and that this was this kind of apprenticeship that you had with him. I was wondering whether he shaped your way of taking pictures in one way or another.
What I had mentioned earlier about obeying my first impressions or my instinct, that definitely shaped the way how I look at things and how trusting my first impression. You know, they have that phrase about women's intuition. Well, I think men have it too. In other words, obey your instincts, you know, and so that's something I learned from him. But also, I was always a big admirer that how, you know, photography was a one way of expressing himself. But, you know, he did sculpture, he did all these other things that ultimately ended up in a photo of his, possibly. And so I loved his idea about being free. I mean, I've taken some of my photographs and I put them on fabric. I put them on plates, porcelain, different things. And so it's fun to take things that you like and see them in a different way. And I was very much taught by him and how to do things through his tutelage.
Yeah, and you already mentioned that Man Ray took photographs of Marcel Duchamp as Rose Salavi in 1923.
23, yeah.
Yes, when you then worked with Warhol, so who came up with this idea to do not something similar, but yes, to turn this into...
We were taught, when Andy and I wanted to collaborate on some kind of project, you know, when we were trying to think of what would it be. And then we were just looking at history books. And then I think that just came up on a page, like we were looking at the history of art or something, you know, and that came up. And then we sort of thought, bingo, we looked at each other and we thought, well, that makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, that the big difference was, though, if you look at the Rose La Vie, Duchamp is wearing like a woman's fur coat or something, which is quite a bit different. And the pictures are very dark, whereas our pictures are very bright and very white, which is very different than that.
Yeah, great. Speaking of Warhol again, so on some occasions you've accompanied Andy Warhol to Berlin and Europe, but sometimes you've also went there by yourself, which brings me to the next image that I chose. It's Gliniker Bridge, West-East Berlin in 1989. So, I mean, we speak of 1989. The situation you captured here speaks for itself. But I was wondering when exactly it was taken. So the wall came down more or less on the 9th of November in 1989. And yes, how quickly did you make it from New York to Berlin?
Well, I had heard about this and I thought, that is so cool. I want to go. And I just boarded a plane and went and photographed all this. And I just remember I was so touched by so many of the East Berliners just doing something as simple as buying bananas and oranges, I was so touched by that. Like, wow, in America, we have all the bananas you want, or in New York City and all the oranges, something as simple as being able to get bananas and oranges. I mean, you don't see that there in the picture, but I remember that scene so well. And of course, I remember those Traubies, those little cars there.
Yes, you can see one here exactly in the front.
Yeah. But I just decided to pick up and go. I mean, I'm not afraid to I travel a lot in general, always have. And my suitcase is almost always packed. It's not a big deal to just pack up and leave. And that picture came about from that moment.
Yes, so Gliniker Bridge is connected the western part of Berlin with Potsdam, which was located in the political east of Germany. Do you remember why you, I don't know, started out at this particular bridge? Was it because of this movement from east to west?
I'm not sure how that happened. I don't remember. Maybe because I was staying in a hotel close to the area, probably. It was accessible. Mm-hmm. You're a curator. When did I go to Berlin with Andy? Oh, I went with him in 1982. Mm-hmm. Because that's when I was there and he photographed Fassbinder. And also that's when, and that's also when I was there with Bob Rauschenberg, and there was that big museum, that big museum exhibition at your, the Mies van der Rohe Museum. I can't think of, what is the name of that museum?
Do you mean this image with him in front of the Pergamon?
No, not that one. He, Joseph Beuys, Bob Rauschenberg, they all had a big exhibition at the big museum in Berlin. It's the Mies van der Rohe building.
Yes, I know. But I think it's no, honestly, I'm hanging here a bit, but I know which one you mean. It's close to Potsdamer Platz. So it's in the very center. And yes, I see it in front of me. I've been there several times, but I miss out on the name.
yeah, no problem. So So when did the Berlin Wall come down? What year is this picture?
It's 1989, and it was on the 9th of November when it all started.
Oh, so it was cold.
It was cold.
Yeah, it was
cold. I mean, it's interesting because the exhibition is titled, the exhibition at the Amerikahaus is titled From a New Yorker's Perspective. And I mean, since I myself was born and raised in the eastern part of Germany, which means that my perspective probably differs drastically from yours. I mean, compared to this, I'm quite young, but I do remember the banana situation.
Oh, you do? Oh, wow.
A little bit.
I love that I hit a chord with you. That's so great. I love that you know the banana situation. And how interesting, because the banana situation is so Warhol with the Velvet Underground and the banana on the Velvet Underground, you know, the one that you
It is. I have the cover and the vinyl here, actually.
Yeah, wow. There's a big connection with the banana here, isn't there?
But yes, so what I just thought is, so what exactly is the New Yorker's perspective when looking at this photograph, or also the others that you took? Just
you mean during the Berlin Wall coming down, or in general?
For example, just because we have this here now, do you think there's a difference when we speak of a New Yorker's perspective, as the title of your exhibition is?
Well, sure. I mean, you know, it's one city person looking at another city person, because, you know, Berlin's a pretty sophisticated city. I mean, when I went to Berlin, both in '89 and '82, Berlin wasn't the center of anything. You know, it was the de facto center of creativity and all that, because I remember we used to go to Cologne, which was the center, which was the capital, which it was so boring for me. I hated Bonn, excuse me. Andy used to go to Bonn, which was the capital, and Herman Wunsch, the art dealer at the time, you know, like, we'd always want to stay in Cologne because it's a city, and he'd always make us stay in Bonn. And to me, no disrespect to Bonn, but it's like, you know, it's a little sleepy little village to me compared to Cologne. So we, you know, the question was why. It's just, we have a, you know, I had a perspective that, I mean, I have this with every major European city, whether it's Rome or Italy or whatever. I mean, but that said, I mean, when I'm in Berlin, I want to be a Berliner. I don't want to be a New Yorker. I want to be who I want to enjoy your culture. If I'm in Munich, I want to enjoy your culture. I don't really bring my New York-ese part of me there, except if I'm chatty or that kind of a person. But I don't try to bring my city with me. I try to look at what's presented in front of me in the way that I do portraits of people. However these people present themselves is what I accept. And when I'm in Munich, I love to be in Munich and go to, you know, the market and, you know, have all the fun that Munich has to offer. One of my really most interesting moments is when during Oktoberfest, I was at that store that sells all that beautiful lederhosen clothes. What's the name of that?
Did you get one?
What? Oh, I have all of that stuff. Are you kidding? It's the famous company that's been around forever. Do you know the name of it? They make this kind of clothing. I mean,
Lodenfrei is the name.
Lodenfrei. That's it.
Very good. Because I'm so from the north of Germany, I don't know about this.
Oh yeah, Lodenfrei. I went and I had bought jackets and clothes from Lodenfrei, and then came out, and we were close to the railroad station. And I remember the trains, thousands and thousands of people, girls in those drindles, guys in those outfits coming out. It was quite a moment that I talk about a New Yorker's perspective. I'd never seen anything like that ever, where people were so thrilled. I mean, just packed and coming out. I like that time in Munich. It's fun.
Yes, everyone was desperate that they couldn't do it this last year. Now we have 2021. Let's see if the next Oktoberfest is going to be as it used to be.
Did they have a virtual Oktoberfest? People sitting at home drinking beer?
Well, maybe privately. Or maybe I missed it out. I don't know.
Probably, right.
I would, so my next pick of the images is maybe you wouldn't guess that I take some an image like that. It's the Chevrolet, LA, California, 1993. I think this image honestly is the best example to show or to tell everyone that apart from all these very wonderful digital offers that came along with the pandemic and the measures that's been taken, so this is like we cannot do without experiencing the art on site. And this is because when I went there and stood in front of this image, which is quite impressive in size and in its dimensions, I could make out all those little details that get lost when looking at a thumbnail version of it. And here, I mean, those very interesting reflections in the bumper on the left and on the right hand side. Yeah. But is it just you? Because I think there are two people, or do you think it's like, I was wondering about it, if you took this, like, did you on purpose? Did you think about it when you took the image? I would like to know more about your process of photographing when you have surfaces that reflect that much in front of you.
No, I only seem to notice those sort of things after the fact, because when I see such a beautiful piece of machinery like that, I'm so overwhelmed that something still exists that's that beautiful, that's sculptured. I mean, when was the last time you saw bumpers that look like that? I mean, those bumpers are wild looking, aren't they? I mean, I'm usually overwhelmed by the impressiveness of something like that in person. So no, that is sort of after the fact. But on the right bumper, is that me, or what is that on the right bumper?
I couldn't make it out. I think on the left-hand side, those are two people that are dressed quite similar. I was not sure whether, I don't think that it's like a mirror effect, but they seem quite funny, which is why I was so interested in it. I would have loved to know more about the situation. On the right-hand side, it looks quite compact. I can't imagine that it's you.
No, that doesn't look that. I don't know what that is. I don't think that's a person. Do you? It's too big.
Yeah.
It's way too big. So no, I mean, I love automobiles. I love cars. And whenever I see something special like that, I photograph it. But it really represents American culture in a way that, like, I mean, in the 50s and 60s, Europe never had cars this big or anything. I mean, they never had cars like this. Not that I can remember. But this was the style of America. This was that moment right after World War II, when America was it was all about thinking big, growing, there's endless possibilities. And this is that kind of a thing that represents that endless that you can get in your car and drive anywhere and you're free to do anything. Mm-hmm. And this is that kind of thing that represents that.
But I mean, that's very interesting what you just said, because you also said with regard to the exhibition that you wanted to take the opportunity to show an aspect of America that no longer is around.
Right. So
is that like a symbol for it, or what did you mean? Could you elaborate a bit on that?
Well, this kind of a car is no longer around, only as a curiosity and antique. I mean, America has gone in a really different direction from that period. It's a very different America from that time. But considering what just recently happened in America and how, we've had a complete switch from one kind of government to another kind of government, it shows that America is still a country that is growing. It's a very young country compared to the kind of, Italy has had governments for hundreds of years, and Germany and Great Britain, and we're just we're still kind of teenagers. And when you're a teenager, you make mistakes, you're rash, you do things that are impulsive, and I think we're still in that state. We're not anywhere to being close to it being adults, and so that's an issue that the rest of the world kind of has to deal with, whether it's easy or not. I mean, but bottom line is, America's still a good it's still, people are good and their intentions are good. I mean, whenever I travel, whatever political viewpoints you have, ultimately people are nice here. I mean, I find that everywhere. You can talk about any culture you want on the news or through the media, but whether I'm in Moscow talking to people on the street, or in Cairo or Jordan or anywhere in the world, we all want the same thing. We all want happiness. We want a roof over our head. We want to have a meal, and ultimately just to be happy in some sort of way. And hopefully America's back on the right road and the right path for that. And through pictures like that, it's a reminder that where we came from and who we are and who we might become.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So all the images that we saw until now, they are all taken with black and white film material. I took another image of my choice, which is the last one, actually. It's the one of Nicola Formichetti. You took it in 2011.
Oh, he's one of my favorites, yeah.
Yeah, so this is really, when I was thinking about the selection, I was, to be honest, I mean, I was fascinated by all of your photographs, but I was really drawn to this one. I heard that the first color session you shot was in 1987 when you photographed Debbie Harry. She's also, you can also see them in the exhibition. And this is now the latest image of the exhibition. How do you decide when to when to turn from black, white, and grayscale, from a black, white, and grayscale palette to a more colorful one?
Well, you know, that's such an interesting question. I always, from the very beginning, when I was all my black and white pictures, when I was looking through the lens, I was always taking color pictures. Mm-hmm. I've always been taking color pictures. It's just a question of how I presented them to you. So all of these black and white pictures really were color pictures.
Oh, okay.
You know, were really color pictures, but I had black and white film in the camera. Whereas in today's digital world, I'm taking color pictures that can either be black and white or color. And I have some of these same pictures in black and white and some in color. But, you know, this picture of Nicola is very much the same kind of speaking to identity, because mm-hmm. Nicola, as you know, he was the stylist for Lady Gaga and still is the stylist for Lady Gaga. And he's the guy that invented the meat dress and all that kind of other stuff. And of course, that's what he did in the past, but he's so actively, you know, he's one of the most important stylists in America. Yes. I mean, and of course, somebody that comes from Japanese Italian descent, I mean, of course you have to be stylish, don't you? I mean, your mom's Italian, your dad's Japanese. How perfect is that, you know? But that's one of my favorite pictures of him. And that's the same thing. We started doing makeup. I actually worked with the Japanese makeup artist, his makeup, and we started, and then it just digressed into something and then became this. And this is one of my favorite pictures.
Yeah, that was actually also the question that I wanted to ask. I mean, this image really feels, to me, compared to the other portrait images that we saw, this one feels quite different. I mean, how did that come? Can you tell us more about the photo session? Because I also heard that, that there was the stylist and
Well, we were doing a project probably for him or for Diesel. And no, I think this was maybe just for his portrait. I think we did this just for his portrait. And so, you know, being he's a stylist and he has a makeup art, she came over and we just did this. And I have a very small studio space in the city and very compact. I should say it's compact. And, but I like compact things because the energy stays very focused. If you have a really big space, that energy is all kind of spread out. And if you have a small space, the energy between the photographer and the subject matter is very succinct, very clear. So for me, that worked out. And that's one of my favorites. And of course, I have a bunch more from that shoot.
And for you, it was then also important to have this image in a color scale. I mean, it's not very colorful, but I think it's quite important, right?
Yeah, this one required that. I mean, you know, if you know how to play with grayscale can be quite colorful. You know, between light and dark and things.
Yeah, it does.
And it's not that much color here. I mean, there is.
Yes. Well, great. You also, I think I heard or I read that you said that your photography is about freedom of expression. And I really think that this quote of yours is captured in this image very well. And yeah, looking at the time, I think this would be one of my last remarks. And I was wondering if we have either some questions from the audience, or if you have anything to add where you think, okay, Franziska, you missed a big point that I really want to talk about.
Well, you know, I did talk about, we talked about so much stuff about identity, identity is so important in today's world, just to know who you are. I mean, another important photograph is the one of Jean-Michel Basquiat holding the globe. Yes. You know, like, who am I? Am I a Black person or am I an artist? And that's why if you notice in that picture, he's holding the globe of Africa in there. And, you know, it's like, you know, am I somebody from the Caribbean? Am I a Black person? Am I an artist? And I remember, you know, he was the only African-American artist that was like really hot at the moment. You know, it was like, he was almost at the same level as women. I mean, there weren't, you know, men occupied the art scene so much bigger. I mean, sure, there was George O'Keeffe, Louise Nevelson and all that, but there weren't to the level of, there were like, you know, Rauschenberg, Lichtenstein, Oldenburg. There weren't that many, and he broke through, and to his great credit, I mean, his paintings are going for millions and millions of dollars. He's one of America's most important artists, not African-American, but just artists. And at the time, dealers were always like, you know, I mean, he got tired of being like the Black American artist. He just wanted to be an artist, and he is. He's certainly proved the test of time.
Yes, he did. When I saw this image, and also heard the story behind it, I was wondering, I mean, do you remember the photo session, and did you both discuss which continent to show? Because it could also as well have been the American continent in order to show, okay, well, I am American.
No, well, we assumed that everybody knew was American, but we wanted to show the roots of things. And so that's why I'm pretty sure I probably told him to turn the globe. And of course, this is a blow up globe. And so it makes another point about how deflated the whole planet can become. And of course, here we are in the middle of a pandemic, and the planet really has, well, it's suffered a lot, but I mean, when you look up at the sky, there's not very many airplanes anymore, nothing. I mean, the air is so much cleaner. Maybe this is that moment that nature has reached out to the world for and say, listen, we need a break. Give us a break.
That was one of my thoughts, to be honest.
Yeah.
At least through the first lockdown, it was really like looking into the sky, and it was all blue, and there was, yes, you couldn't see anything left from the planes and aircrafts.
It's nice. Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
It is. It is. Yeah. Do we have any questions coming in? So if not, then I could also, I mean, you already mentioned them. So you took photographs of Andy Warhol, of Robert Rauschenberg, of Jean-Michel Basquiat, Keith Haring. So this is really like the who is who of the, let's say, pop art related art scene back in the 1980s. I mean, how did that all come about? Was it all through the factory? On the other hand, you also said that you introduced Warhol.
Well, no, you know, the thing is, it's always nice to have a meeting place, you know, a meeting spot where people can exchange. You know, in the 1930s and 40s, artists had salons, you know, or, you know, they had it in Paris or even in Berlin. But I actually think that the factory was like a salon in a way. And so that was a great place if somebody knew somebody to introduce them to Andy or for Andy to be introduced to be somebody else or whatever. And so 860 Broadway, which is at 17th Street and Broadway in New York City, on the third floor is where the factory is. And it's so ironic because now at that location is a Petco. Do you know what Petco is? Petco is a pet store that sells everything to do with pets, dogs, collars, everything. And so Andy's old factory is now a pet shop. Wild, right?
Okay, that's quite wild, yes. But I also read that you said that you figured that the factory back then is that what now is like the social media platforms are, because everyone would come in, share their pictures, show them to one, comment on that.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, Andy was the first Twitter because Twitter is really gossiping and exchanging ideas and things like that. And so, you know, and I took a lot of Polaroid SX70s, which in effect was the first Instagram. You know, that was for sure that. But like I said, having a center place to meet, in the case of like fashion designers, Halston's atelier, he would meet with young, new future creative people that would work at his atelier up on Madison Avenue. I mean, same with Rauschenberg or Lichtenstein. If you're a young artist or a painter and you needed a place to apprentice, you could go to these studios. And now in today's world, there's no place for young people to apprentice with a Beyonce or with, you know, I don't know who. Where do you apprentice nowadays? You apprentice on the internet pretty much. You know, you create a YouTube video, or you show your pictures on Instagram, or you show your films on TikTok. I mean, the internet is where you apprentice, it appears.
Yeah, so we have one question coming in from Thomas Luke, and he asks, when is the perfect moment to capture the authentic person? Any routine which helps to get this surfaced?
The perfect moment is in between a conversation when they don't know you're doing it. You know what I mean? That's the perfect moment.
That's an old trick, right?
Yeah, it's an old trick. Well, you have a conversation and a dialogue with them, and just as you know, you're having a conversation, that's when you snap the pictures, and often you get really good pictures. But it also depends on the subject matter. Some subject matters, I have a feeling so many subject matters in today's world want to be photographed. I mean, you can just see by the enormity and the scope of the photographs. I mean, you're a curator, you know that. I mean, just go on Instagram. I mean, do we need museums? Do we need magazines? I mean, everybody has taken self-control over what they want to see. I mean, I think personally, TikTok is one of the most innovative and creative areas I've seen in a long time, where you are edited into your time in it is 3 minutes. Do something interesting. And it's just amazing how people, just regular people, it forces them to be interesting and creative. It's the same way with Instagram as far as photography. All of these mediums, I mean, all of the institutions that we're used to, museums, magazines, we are sort of bystanders to what's going on. I always thought that movements came from the bottom down and worked their way up. Of course, a lot of people think it's from the top down, and that's where museums, magazines always felt that they could dictate what was going on. I think that's really coming in reversal. I mean, I know a lot of institutions, museums even, are doing exhibitions on, you know, it used to be video things that they would say, but now it's social media exhibitions and, you know, stuff that's out there. I know you have another question I saw come in.
Yes, but I'm confused because there is written that someone else is going to ask. I mean, I can read it out. So Tatjana Schäfer asks, you said you try to leave your city behind when you travel, but wouldn't you say that being a New Yorker, there's still something of a New Yorker's gaze that comes through even unwillingly?
Oh, for sure. I mean, you can't just be naked or lose who you are. Of course, I mean, a Berliner comes to New York and they just want to experience New York, but they still want to have, or no, a person from the UK, let's say, they still want to have a cup of tea. You know what I mean? I can't think of like what tradition a German wants when they come here, but you know.
So what is your tradition when you go somewhere? Do you find yourself like ordering always the same, or try to find?
No. When I'm in Europe, I always want to have, if I'm in Italy, I'm always searching for the best pasta dish. If I'm in Germany, I'm always looking for a really good wiener something, you know, something with something, you know, with mustard, with currywurst. I'm always looking for the best version, or I'm looking for where you take eggs and flour and just make it that noodle. I love that noodle.
Yes, Spätzle.
Spätzle with, to me, homemade spätzle with a little butter and salt and pepper. Oh my God, so delicious. So I'm never.
And crispy onions on top of it.
Oh yeah. Forgot that. Yeah. Oh, don't. Come on.
And we understand each other.
Oh yeah. Oh, I love that dish so much. If we make it to Munich, we're gonna go have that together, I hope.
Yes.
For sure.
So is that the final remark now, talking about crispy onions and spätzle? That would be funny.
Well, you know, I mean, you know, that's what art's all about. It's all about realness or something. I don't know. Yeah.
Getting together, actually, really like getting together, which is, I mean, it's so nice that we can do it like that, but you know, it doesn't replace it.
I've been telling everybody through the pandemic, if there are galleries and institutions right now that are open in your town, whatever town it is, go. Like the Whitney is open, the Met is open. Nobody's going, but it's to go to these museums and see these big pieces of art and stand in front of them during a pandemic is so wonderful, because for a brief moment, you forget about everything. You really forget that there's all this stuff going on. And that's the wonderfulness of art. It's a reminder that you can escape into another world for a minute or two. And it often can bring us joy to look at a beautiful painting or a great photograph or a beautiful dance or a wonderful piece of music. And those things can help us through the day sometimes, you know. And we're lucky in New York that galleries are still open, limited, museums are open, limited. But that's the beauty of it. I mean, all my friends that go to them, you go and you have the whole Met to yourself. Can you imagine the whole Met to yourself? Same with the Whitney, same with MoMA. Like, it's wonderful.
Yes, it's true what you say. And we are so looking forward to reopen again. And I was in our museum the last day before the lockdown started. It was a Sunday. And it was, I mean, people were queuing in front of it because of the measures. But they were queuing, it was raining, it didn't matter for them. They still waited in order to experience some art before everything shuts down. And that was very touching, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The show finishes on the 28th, is that correct?
Actually, I don't know.
Oh, that's fine. That's right. You're not with the museum. That's okay. I don't know either. That's okay. That's fine.
So Christian von Sydow, do you want to come back and join us?
Okay, yes.
With the amazing backdrop of yours.
Yeah.
For not my video. Okay, Christopher, Franziska. That was a very stimulating and nice talk between the two of you. Christopher, it's very important that we get you over here again soon.
I hope so. I hope so.
So this shitty pandemic time is soon over. It gets warm again, and then everything is away. And then we are all vaccinated. And so it is important that we then have you here again in Munich and in Germany, and have your photograph exposed. That would be great. And thank you very much for being with the Amerikahaus, being with the US Consulate and with the American Chamber of Commerce tonight. And hope to see you soon here in Germany and in Munich and in Berlin again.
Yeah, it's my real dream to be there. So let's make this happen. We'll do it. It'll happen.
Yes, we will bring the spätzle and the beer and good wine, whatever you like most.
Yeah, cool.
And then we celebrate you being back in Germany.
Oh, I can't wait. Perfect.